Make sure we're live on YouTube. Then I'll grab that link. Still says video unavailable. I'm going to click save and see what happens here in Circle. Crap, says that in Circle. So, I don't know what it is. I said allow embed. And this is supposed to be the right link.
Trying to see if anybody's like asking any questions like, hey, do we have
I hope they are.
Somebody posted a comment. Great, good. Awesome.
I don't know why it keeps telling me I can't embed. It's public. I said allow embeds. When I click here to edit video and I go look at the details and I go to show more, it says allow. Oh, it turned off. I said allow embedding and then clicked save. Now this time it said changes saved. So maybe it didn't save it the last time. So let me go back and try this one more time.
Okay, now, well, it's okay because now I've got video unavailable, playback on other websites has been disabled by the video owner. So at least it's progress. I'm seeing something different on my screen.
There we go. Okay, so tell me if you see us live now in Circle.
I refreshed my screen, so it's taking a minute. It's taking its sweet time. Podcast workflow intervention. Are we having an intervention?
I think so.
Workflow.
So in Circle, you should see it. And if you click the play button, you should hear us in Circle.
Okay, I see something. There we go. La, la, la. Come on, baby.
Or you're going to sing for us? All right. No. I can do percussion.
Can I just tell you how much I absolutely love the music on StreamYard when you test to see if it's going to your headphones or your speakers when you check your output devices?
I've never done that. So I'll take your word for it. But I think we're live because I'm sitting here looking at Circle on one of my many monitors and I see us in there.
If you can see it, then we're good.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience. We were having a couple of technical difficulties. But it's all right.
It's all good.
So someone has said I see in StreamYard, I can see you, but I don't see how to join and be seen. So greetings from Croatia. You are live. Yay.
I think that is, I'm guessing that Podcast Editing Plus is Steph.
Okay, so yay, let's go ahead and get started. We apologize.
Oh,
we have been in here. We are professionals. We have been in here testing, but we just had a couple of snafus, but we would not be denied, would we, Lindsay?
Nope. So persistent to the point that it's kind of weird.
Or kind of fantastic. I choose fantastic. So yay, thank you everyone for your patience. I have 3 questions that were submitted in advance, but I'm going to let Lindsay keep an eye on what's happening in Circle because I can't look at that and then look at the screen at that same time. So just for quick intros, for those of you who have not met us before in our new Podcraft community, I am Allegra Sinclair, and I work on Podcaster Success for the podcast host and Alitu, and my esteemed co-host is Lindsay Harris Friel. What would you like us to know about you, Lindsay?
Hello, I am the content thresher, which means that I separate the wheat from the chaff. No,
And for those of us who went to school in New Jersey, that means...
Oh, come on. You really got to stop knocking on New Jersey. They have Princeton.
That's true.
They have Princeton. They have people who go crazy smart.
And that is where I grew up. So, okay, yep. I'll stop dogging New Jersey.
So,
but content thresher means what?
It just means that I write and I take difficult ideas and I refine them so that I can share them with the podcasting public and they can understand them better.
Awesome.
Like, what is an RSS feed? An RSS feed is a difficult idea, and I beat that idea until it loses its hard shell, and then it becomes soft and nice Wonder Bread for you.
Awesome.
Yep.
I'm going to leave the Wonder Bread thing alone. So
I know, me too. I shouldn't have said Wonder Bread as soon as I said.
But what we are doing today is we are talking about podcasting workflow. It is a hot topic always. And we actually put together this training about a month ago and ran it one time live, and the response was amazing. So we decided that we needed to bring it over here to our new Podcraft community. So can't wait to hear what you guys think of it over here in Circle. We are loving it on this side, but we want to know what you think as well. So let me tell you what we're going to do. As I said, if you have questions, please drop them below. Ooh, someone said Lindsay is a master editor and gave you the woot woot. So...
Stephanie Fuccio is joining us as she's sitting
she's one of our guides.
Stephanie she is one of our guides, and she writes she's better at the tech side of podcasting than I am.
Okay. So. Well, thanks, Steph, for being here.
Yeah.
If you have questions as we're going along, feel free to drop them right below in Circle or on YouTube, wherever you happen to be. I'm keeping an eye on YouTube, and Lindsay's keeping an eye on Circle. And I have some questions, as I mentioned, that I'll get to at the end. One of them kind of relates to our topic and the other two don't, but I'm still going to answer them while we're here with you today. So in the next 35, 40 minutes, what we're going to do is we're going to clarify the big picture for your podcast. So no matter what stage you are, whether you're a veteran podcaster, you're kind of dipping your toe in, or you're brand new, we're going to clarify how you set the big picture for your podcast. And then once you have the big picture, how you break that down into bite-sized chunks. It's one of my favorite metaphors, bite-sized chunks. And then how you can organize your show notes, your interviews, your graphics, right? Podcasting has a fair amount of pieces, right? There are several ingredients, and we need to be able to figure out where they are when we need them to keep our flow moving. Then we'll touch on tools to help you with specific tasks, and then end with tips for how you stay motivated as a podcaster based on the workflow that we've talked through, and then any other questions that you have. So first, let's talk about the big picture for your podcast. How do you set the big picture for your podcast? Now, you can just wing it and pick up a microphone and start talking. I know that you can do this because I have done this once.
Oh, yeah.
With a previous podcast. So having walked through that, what do you learn from my pain? That is not the best way to do it. The best way to establish the big picture is to take a little time and plan ahead. What do you need to plan?
Yeah, it's easier to sustain it. If you're just winging it, it's hard to sustain.
Exactly, right? Because what do you sustain, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like my favorite fair treat, cotton candy. Yeah, it's fun, but there's nothing to it.
Yeah,
and winging it is like the cotton candy of podcasting. So you need to think ahead of time. Who are you talking to, and why are you podcasting? If you're podcasting because everybody else seems to be doing it, let's dig down a little bit further, because when you get to episode 4 or 5, you're going to need more than because everybody else is doing it.
Yeah.
So think about your audience and what's their problem, and then what is your solution to that problem.
Yeah.
I know that sounds really basic, but a lot of us skip that step because it's not as sexy, right?
Right.
Your artwork is sexy, right? Your music is sexy, but the planning, not as sexy, but super important. So as you're thinking and you're planning ahead, who are you talking to? Why are you talking to them? What are you telling them? And what makes you unique? Now, I want to say very quickly that just because you're talking about a topic that you think another podcaster talks about, that doesn't mean your podcast won't be unique, because you have a unique viewpoint. You have a different way of looking at it. You have a different way of talking. Your audience is for you.
Mhm.
So there could be three podcasters who all talk about the same topic, and they're going to be very different podcasts. So
Mhm.
don't worry about that. But when I say what makes you unique, I mean, what are you bringing to the conversation that is different than someone
Mhm.
else? So it sounds like a big task, but before you start even thinking about recording the first episode, I'd love to suggest, because I don't give people unsolicited advice, but well, maybe
Mhm.
Lindsay, but she lets me. But
That's different. That's different.
I would love to suggest that you brainstorm 20 to 25 topics that you're
Mhm.
going to talk about on your show. Because if you have a pool of 20 to 25 topics to talk about, you're not going to run out of things after episode 3 and then think to yourself, oh, Lord, what do I talk about next? Right? You can then decide, okay, if I want to tackle all 20 of these topics, great. In what order does it make sense to talk about them? Right? Do the topics build on one another? Do you need a
Mhm.
foundation before you get to some of the later episodes?
Right.
And then once you have decided what you're going to talk about and in what order, then you can start scheduling the topic that you want to discuss for your first 12 episodes.
Can I just add something? I think
Sure.
I would also add, I cannot stress strongly enough writing them down, because I've had people say to me, "Oh, I've got tons of ideas and I know what they all are. They're right here." But remember that movie Amadeus, when Mozart kept saying, "Oh yeah, it's all right up here," and look what happened to him. He died. But
With his songs unplayed.
with his songs unwritten, he
Mhm.
died with some guy sitting there going, with the guy who tried to kill him sitting there going, yeah, let me write this down. This is good. This is good.
Yes, yes.
So, but yeah, you have to
It's a really
write
good
it
point.
down, because that's how you're going to bring it to life. And also, once it's written down, it's there, it's on the wall, or it's in a book or whatever. And then it becomes a resource as opposed to a thing.
It frees you, right?
Yes.
Part of establishing a good workflow is making sure that you're not trying to keep everything in your head with all the other
Hmm.
things that you have going on in your life,
Hmm.
right? So, yes, writing it down
Exactly.
on paper frees you. That's a great
Hmm.
point to make. So, we've talked about how you establish the big picture, which is critical, even if it's not that sexy.
Hmm.
So, a workflow for your podcast, once you've done your planning, includes a lot of steps. So,
Hmm.
there's the planning that we talked about, there's setup, there's recording. I'm going to have slides of this at the end, so you don't need to write all these notes down right now. But
Yeah.
there's setup, there's recording, there's editing, there's show notes, there's publishing, there's promotion, right? If you're doing an interview podcast as opposed to solo, there's scheduling, right? So there are a lot of different steps to a podcast workflow. So some of you are probably thinking right now, yeah, I knew that part.
Yeah.
But that's one big elephant. So
Hmm.
we eat the elephant one bite at a time by
Hmm.
breaking it into chunks. So the
Hmm.
first chunk you might look at is, how much time are you going to need to walk through your podcast workflow?
Hmm.
Right? How much time will you need and where can you get it? So there's a random like podcasting math equation that says you need 3 to 4 times as much time as the length of your podcast in order to walk through the workflow. So if I go with 4 times, if my episode is going to be 15 minutes long, I need at least 4 times that or an hour for the workflow to put that together. That's
Yeah.
minimum.
Yeah.
So in your planning, when you've decided I'm going to talk for 15 minutes, my episodes are going to be an hour long, plan appropriately. Because if you have an hour long episode and it takes 4 hours for the workflow for that, it's probably not a good idea to say, I'm going to do this on Friday evenings. I was going to say
Yeah.
before we go out, but are people doing that? So it's not a
Yeah.
good thing to decide that you're going to do it Friday evening from 7:30 to 8 if you know in advance that your workflow takes 4 hours.
Or you're going to be really tired or
Right.
whatever. Right.
So give yourself appropriate time in order to
Hmm.
get the work accomplished and then be productive with the time that you have. So
Hmm.
if I know that my workflow is probably going to take 4 hours, personally, I'm going to break that out because I'm not going to sit down perhaps and do 4 hours all at one time. I might do an hour here, an hour
Hmm.
here, an hour here. But once I've looked at it and broken the task down into bite sized chunks, then I know what to do with that hour.
Hmm.
Because part of the frustration when you're getting started with podcasting, if there's any frustration, for me, I wanted to know how to do everything yesterday. And part
Yeah.
of the frustration was when I found an hour, I didn't know what I should do with that hour,
Hmm.
which is why breaking it out and planning on being productive with your time helps solve that, because it should be simple to work on your show.
You sort of have to look at it like having a second job or physical therapy or something like that. Like 2 to 4 every, like, I don't know, 4 to 5 every day is going to be the time when I work on my podcast, as opposed to, oh, I'll do it when I'll do it when the kids are asleep or the dog doesn't need to be walked or whatever. It's like, if you make it dependent on other things getting done, you'll never get it done.
Yes. Or if you just say, oh, I need to get it done this week. I can't be the only person who has done that. I'll say to myself on Sunday, oh yeah, I need to get my podcast episode edited this week.
Yep.
Okay. So if you're overwhelmed when working on your podcast, that's a sign that you haven't broken your elephant down into bite-sized chunks. So one of the things that Colin talks about often when he's talking about how you reduce your editing time is batching. And I love that. I was doing that before I knew that it had a name. But once I have everything set up where I'm going to record, I'll record more than one episode at one time. Because once I get in the flow, the microphone's the right distance away, I'm feeling like I'm just magical, right? I want to record more than one episode. So then I record at one time, then I edit at one time, right? Then I might set up my graphics at one time. But once you get in the flow, it'll be much simpler for you to continue doing those types of activities if you kind of bunch them together. The other thing that I'll say is recording your episode doesn't take the most time. Lots of people think that that's the most time. It's not. The prepping for and the post work takes much more time than the actual recording time. So even if you don't want to batch the other pieces, if you will just try batching the recording, I think you'll see a huge difference in how your podcast workflow works for you. If it's hard for you, that means something isn't working.
Now, I'm having a little, just not to shift gears or anything, but I'm having a little bit of trouble with Circle. So I'm having trouble seeing comments after a certain point that was above a comment I left. So if people are leaving comments, please don't feel that we're ignoring you. I'm just having a little trouble loading the page.
So if you scroll up to the top, can you click to see all of the comments versus just the most recent ones? Might that help you?
Oh, good point.
And there's also, when there's like little mini conversations, you'll see a show more replies.
Yeah.
We're all new to Circle, so no apologies necessary. But yes, you can scroll up and ask it to show you all of them. And then you can also see show more replies.
Yeah. Right now, what I've got is a partially loaded page. So I'm just going to let it sit. I'll figure it out. But I just wanted to apologize in advance if it seems like I'm ignoring people. So
we would never ignore people. So I'm sure that would never have occurred to them. Okay, so
it's not that we ignore people. We just sometimes we have trouble. Sometimes it takes a while to find the answer.
Yes. Oh, so are you ready to know what the absolute best podcast workflow is? Like the best one?
Oh my God, yes, please.
Tell me
about it.
Okay, the best podcast workflow
is
the one you will stick with.
Yes.
I know. Felt like a cheat answer, right? But the best podcast workflow for me is different than the best podcast workflow for Steph or Lindsay. It's the one that's simple for you. It's the one that fits how you want to work. And it's the one you will stick with. Because hear my heart on this. Let me just go Southern on you. Hear my heart here.
Please do.
If you change your process every week, you will make yourself crazy.
Yeah.
If someone says to you, oh, this is how I do my podcast workflow, and you're like, oh, well, they've been podcasting longer than I have, so let me jump over there. Please don't do that. Pick a workflow. We're going to talk through it, right? We've already mentioned what the steps are, and we're going to talk through ways that you can write out your workflow. Just stick with that for 90 days. Then if you don't like something, then tweak it. But the magic is in repetition, just like with anything, right?
Yeah.
What did someone tell me? It takes 3 weeks to create a habit, but it takes 2 weeks to change your taste buds, something. It takes time for things to change and for it to work for you. So stick with the podcast workflow for 90 days and then make all the changes that you like. Okay. So find the one that you will stick with. So you need to like it. I remember a couple years ago, I've been podcasting for 9 years now. And I remember a couple years ago, everybody and their mama was doing a particular activity. I'm not going to mention it because I don't want us to get sidetracked, but everybody and their mama who I knew was a podcaster was doing this one thing. And I was like, oh, I guess I should do that one thing. But then I had a little conversation with myself and I was like, I hate that. I don't want to do that. So I put it in my workflow for like 5 minutes and I was like, I hate it. And I keep not doing the rest of my workflow because this one piece is stopping me. So I pulled it back out. And guess what? My workflow works for me, right? So everyone's will be different. But what was critical for me was writing out all the steps. So again, I know this doesn't seem particularly exciting. It's not logo colors, but it can be really exciting, right? Because once you've written it down on paper, it's easy to see where your workflow works and where it isn't so easy. So I challenge you. Have you done this recently? Written down the whole, yes, you won.
Oh, I wasn't sure. I write down bullet journals I use bullet journals for my podcast workflow, because what happens with bullet journals is that everything on the list for that day, it either gets done, migrated, or removed. What I mean by migrated is you migrate it to the next day. Or you put it somewhere else. Otherwise you say like, hey, you know what? I'm just simply not going to do that this month. We'll revisit it next month. So what happens is you end up, I noticed that I was writing the same to-do list every day. And I thought, I might as well be bullet journaling, which I always thought was just like some sort of real goofy, trendy thing that people did on Pinterest. But I always find that writing things down, there's this whole relationship between like your head and your heart and your hand that makes you sort of edit and process as you're writing. And it sort of makes you like you internalize what is going onto the paper a little bit better, I think.
Okay. I had written mine down a long time ago electronically, like I had it down digitally. And we're getting ready to kick off the 3rd season of our Podcraft podcast. That's a tongue twister for me. But I actually stepped back and started writing down all the steps again. And it was eye-opening where I was doing things. Yes, right. Because I had been doing some things for so long that I didn't write them down. But when I had to write it down as if, okay, maybe I won't do all the steps, or to challenge myself if these were still the right steps. It was a lot of fun as I got into it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm just that kind of a nerd, but
no. You know what? If you think about it, it's like when you look up a recipe on your phone, and then it's got all the pop-up ads and it's got all the annoying stuff and it's got the whole life story about, oh, the first time I had cauliflower and everything. And then if you sit down and you write down the recipe, it becomes clear to you. And you could also take a moment to think to yourself like, oh, well, maybe I don't want to use flour to thicken it. Or maybe I don't want to, maybe I don't want those. Did they really say 5 spoons of chili powder? That, yeah. Like, wait, how many? As opposed to just reading it off your phone on the fly. It's like, yes, I know, Liberty Mutual, right? You're sitting, as opposed,
I think pen and paper is magical. In so many circumstances, pen and paper is powerful, right? So when I write down every task that I want to do for my podcast episode, and I also write down the tool that I want to use, it makes my workflow so much simpler, because then I'm not constantly having to rethink, okay, what do I do next? What do I do next, right? I just want to know what tools I'm using for each of the tasks and then just keep pushing forward. So Scott, I see you over there, not ignore you. Yes, you can ask any question you like, serve it up. So the other magical thing about writing down every task is that you get to create a quick checklist. Now we have a couple checklists here in Circle in the resources area, and we have more that we're going to be adding. We didn't want to dump them all on you at one time and overwhelm you, but there's more goodness coming. But a checklist is great. I still use one 9 years later when I'm getting ready to finish an episode and publish it. So I can just make sure I checked off all the boxes, right? So the best podcast workflow is the one that fits how you want to work. It's simple and you will stick with it. And you figure that out by writing out all the steps in your workflow.
Mm-hmm.
So when you write everything down, you remove overwhelm and you remove guesswork. So if you don't have one, think about it. If you had a recording checklist so that you could remind yourself when you get ready to record an episode to make sure that you completed all the steps, you would move through that much faster, much quicker, and with more confidence.
Mm-hmm.
The other magical thing about writing everything down is that you can find tasks that can be automated
Mm-hmm.
and which ones you still need to do, or which you might want to outsource to someone else, whether that's a service, a tool, right? There are many different ways of outsourcing pieces of that. And then later, if you decided that you wanted to have someone on your team to help you, you don't then have to go back and do the brain dump and figure out how you do what you do. You already have the checklists and the processes set so that you can just share those to get your freelancer or your team member up to speed quickly.
Exactly. You know what? When now that you mention it, when so Matthew McLean, he's the head of content for the podcast host. He created this book that is that has things that you can fill in. It's sort of a fill in the blank process, and it does exactly what you said. I mean, some people don't want to buy an actual book and they would rather write it out for themselves. But if you're that kind of person, it's, you you can look it up in the podcast host website. I think
you're talking about the pretty planner.
Yeah, the podcast host journal planner. I love it. It's so cute. Actually, what happened was I got it and I liked it so much. And my husband was just getting ready to start a podcast. So I gave it to him. And now, like, I haven't seen it since because he's using it. So off the top of my head, I'm not exactly sure what's going on with that. But.
Yes, you are.
Well, you better.
You're never going to get it again.
I'm never going to get it back. I'm going to have to go buy another one.
That is exactly what's
going
on
to go buy
that.
another
Say
one.
goodbye.
Exactly.
Yes, that's what's going on with that. But that's a good point, right? If you don't want to start with a blank piece of paper, because that can be intimidating.
Right. Exactly.
And some of the templates and checklists from the podcast host journal planner are actually in the resource section. So if you started there and then decided that you wanted more, you could obviously do that as well.
Oh, terrific.
Winging it's what leads to overwhelm. So
yes, that's definitely true.
All right, Scott, I see your questions and I'm going to hold them to the end, but I'm absolutely going to answer them. Okay.
Meanwhile, I'm changing my Circle password because I just cannot deal with. I'm going to try using Circle in Chrome instead of Safari.
Okay.
So that should be fun. Yeah, I'm having a good time.
Are you having Circle challenges?
I'm having some challenges.
Of technology challenges, but we can do hard things. So I believe it's going to be okay.
We can go to the moon.
Okay, so I'm going to peek over here now because you are having trouble. So just a moment here. Yes. Jennifer. Hey, Jennifer. Are there any recommendations for batching for new podcasters? How many do you recommend recording? First, I recorded a bunch and it's taken me forever to launch, but it's happening soon. So first of all, bravo for continuing and deciding that you're going to launch soon, Jennifer. And sorry, I'm a coach in my other life, so I just have to ask the question, when is soon? Let's pick a date because your brain will help you move towards a specific date, but it doesn't know what to do when you just say launching soon. So let's pick a date. And then recommendations for batching. I love that you're starting right out the gate with batching because it's going to be so much simpler for you to stay on track. Now, I don't have a specific number in mind of how many I recommend you record first, and here's why. Because it will differ based on what your experience level is with listening to your own voice or recording your own voice. So when I first started my podcast, I think I recorded 7 episodes over a 3-day period of time because it would weird me out hearing my voice. And I'd worked in media for a really long time, so I don't know why it was different when I did a podcast, but it was. So I recorded like 7 episodes, but guess what? I deleted some of them because I'm allowed. It's my podcast and I can do what I like. So a couple of them I re-recorded and others I thought, not in love with the topic. And I want to be in love with my show. So I would say to record the number that makes you feel confident to publish the first one. How about that? So if it's 3 episodes for you that gave you that confidence, great. If it's 5, if it's 7, whatever that number is for you. But the more you practice, right, the more you actually create podcasts, the smoother you'll get and the better it gets and the more you will like it. So pop back in here and let me know if you need more answers than that. I would say a minimum of 3, though, if you were going to hold me to a number. But again, do what's comfortable for you. And I'm glad that you've recorded a bunch. I'm interested to know why it's taking you forever to launch. So, is there something that has you stuck that we can help you get unstuck with so you can pick a date and get that first one out? No pressure. But while we're talking, it can't hurt to ask.
She did say she has a date here saying November 15th.
Oh, yay.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
cool.
coming up.
Okay, all right.
And also, that's a good choice because, Jennifer, if you have Veterans Day off from work on the 11th, you might have a good long time to just make sure that you have everything all lined up exactly where you want it.
Oh, yay.
So, guess how many
November
episodes?
15th.
Guess how many episodes I had in the cam when I launched with?
How many?
10. I had. That's
Go
how
bigger,
I
stay
batched.
tuned.
Yep. I had 10 episodes.
Okay.
I lined them all up and had them all ready to go and then just put them out one at a time.
Okay, good for you.
That's how I batched.
I didn't have 10 available all at one time, right? So there's whatever you're comfortable with, Jennifer. So let me know if she comes back with other questions to that because I've moved now off of Circle. Okay. So let's talk specifically about show notes for just a moment. And I will tell you next Wednesday at the exact same time at 2:00, we're going to have a guest expert come in, Danielle Desir, and she teaches a master class on podcast show notes. And she's coming next Wednesday at 2 here, free in our community. So you don't have to pay her usual masterclass fee. She's going to come to talk to us. I know. I'm just saying, she's awesome. And we were talking a little bit yesterday, and this is my last bit of commercial for this, but her show notes are so impactful that she uses them to do like affiliate marketing. And she has earned a crazy, I mean, ridiculous amount of money from her podcast show notes. I don't want to I don't want to step on her thunder when she tells you what the amount is, but I'll tell you it's more than $10,000. So it's like big girl.
Way.
So next Wednesday at 2, you definitely want to listen to Danielle talk about show notes.
Oh, I do.
Yes, at a minimum, when you're talking about show notes, we're talking about now your show notes can either be in your podcast host settings, or it could be if you decide to use your show notes on your website, right? That's up to you. We're going to talk about that a little bit more, how you might pick one over the other next week. But I just want to make sure when I say show notes, I'm not talking about the 2 to 3 sentences that you use that show up in players that entice people to listen to the episode. I'm talking about the longer bit of information that includes typically a summary, maybe a time code guide, more in-depth information about the topic that you covered in that episode. You might also include quotables or shareable images. You definitely want to include links to any resources that you mentioned in your episode. And I would just say that you should pick one place to keep your show notes. So don't try to put your show notes in several different places. Remember, we're all about podcast workflow rescue. Want to make yourself bonkers? Have to repeat that same activity in 3 different places. So just pick a place for your show notes. If you work with a host and you want to keep your show notes there, great. Just be consistent and keep them there. If you want them on your website, just do it there. Just pick a spot. And make sure that your show notes provide additional information about what they listened to in that episode. So if I listen to the whole episode and I am like, oh, that was fire, I want more. I don't want to look at your show notes and see the exact same thing, right? I want to see the links with additional information. I want to see somewhere else that I can go get more, right? Transcripts is a separate thing. Transcripts and show notes, not the same thing, but you can absolutely link to your transcript in your show notes if you choose to.
One of the things about transcripts that some people do, I personally don't, just because I have a whole thing with this and I'm going to have to work on it on my own. But I know. If you some people will do this. Let's say you have a post on your website. Maybe it has your player in it and it has your show notes, and then below that you have the whole transcript.
Hmm.
Some people don't like to do this for various reasons because they feel like it's an invitation for people to copy and paste their text and use it on their own, that it's like an invitation to plagiarism. Other people feel that it's a great idea because it improves your SEO. And it
Mm-hmm.
does. It's, in my opinion, it's a great SEO tactic. If you want your search engine optimization to have, like, as you're going along, okay, here's my show notes and here's my transcript, boom, right there. Yeah, it'll make it easier for people to find the topics that you talked about in your podcast. But it's up to you whether or not you want to do it that way.
So I think that I love the SEO aspects of it. So there's a couple of ways you can include your transcript that doesn't enable people to just copy and paste. I can honestly say, which is funny to me because I'm like the privacy queen, that didn't occur to me that somebody would like try to go through and copy and paste my transcript, because I'm like, they can't be me. I mean, yeah, you can copy, but the original is always better.
Well, I
But
mean, like,
there's a couple
yeah.
of plugins, right? So it's called Fusebox. Pat Flynn started. Well, Fusebox bought the plugin from Pat Flynn, and it's a transcripts plugin, and it adds the transcript, but you have to, it's like a toggle, so you don't see the whole transcript. You have to actually click the button to see the whole transcript.
Oh, I
So
like
Google
that.
can read it on the page, but it's not visible there immediately. And the other thing is, which I love, is that you can click a button and you can download a PDF of it.
Nice.
So that is one option. I have another friend who uses Thrive Architect page builder. Divi might have something similar, Elementor or Beaver. I don't know any of those, but I do know Thrive. And you can actually create a toggle that has your transcript available. So again, it's available for Google to see it, but it's not visible the first thing. You actually have to interact with it on the page to see the whole transcript. And it works on mobile, just like it does on a desktop. So if you wanted to include your transcript on that page for the SEO benefits, but you don't want it just like rolling out, because transcripts as a rule not formatted, right? So
yeah, they're not formatted well.
If you just don't want it to look like that, you could use one of those. I think Simple Podcast Press as well from Hani Moore. I think that also has a transcript feature on it as well. So if you want to use transcripts and you don't want it to just dump kind of plain unformatted text at the bottom of your post, there are some options to do that. And Fusebox is free.
Fusebox is free?
Yeah. The transcript plugin.
Hello, friend. Hello. I was just sitting here. I'm looking this up on another monitor right now. I'm like, ah.
Yeah, I think it might be Fusebox.fm. I know it's in the tools section. There's actually a link in the slides, but I think it might be Fusebox.fm. But let's keep moving. So if you're doing an interview show and not just solo shows, there is additional information that you need to gather, right? So there are questions, there's scheduling, there's bio information, right? So if you're doing an interview show, you want to make sure that you're organizing all your information for that in one place as well, right? Make that part of your podcast workflow. Now, I do half episodes solo. Well, not half, but I do some episodes solo and some episodes with a guest. So I actually have two workflows. One's my guest workflow, one's my solo workflow, right? So a lot of areas they're identical, but I do have different things for both. So one of the decisions that you'll make when you want to do interview episodes is, do you want to ask the same questions every time? That can be really effective, right? It's kind of like you did a huge panel, right? But the people were separated by time, but you're asking different people the same questions to kind of build a bigger story. So that's one way to do with it. So if you want to ask questions in advance, do you want them to be the same? If not, do you want to send the questions in advance? Now, I recommend sending the questions in advance always, because some people are great thinking on their feet, but as a guest, it's always nice to know in advance what you're going to ask me, what you're going to talk about. It gives me a chance to think about it and give a fuller response, which is what you want, right? You want your audience to get the most out of it as possible. Also think about how you're going to handle scheduling, not the emailing back and forth thing. Like, well, when are you available? Okay, well, I'm available here. Oh, well, it's taking you a day and a half to get back to me. So now there's a lot of tools. We'll talk about a couple at the end, but just pick a tool, because there are so many available to you. And there's probably a couple free ones. They're not super high cost, but there's a lot of great
Like
tools.
A Boss. There's Doodle or Doodly or Doodle. I never heard of that one. Gotta look it up. I'm trying to remember the one. I think Colin used to use Book Like a Boss.
I use that
And
sometimes, but
I remember. It's
Calendly.
Calendly.
I
That one,
love that
yeah.
one. Yeah, Calendly, Acuity. There are a lot of them. We'll talk about that in tools, but just pick a tool. It's really easy to integrate it with whatever main calendar you use, and you can set aside blocks of time so that they're not going to schedule a podcast interview with you at a time that doesn't work for you. Another tool that you might want to use for managing your interviews is just a Google Sheet, right? Just a spreadsheet so that you can figure out, okay, so this is my guest. They're coming on this date. We're going to talk about X. So did I send them the scheduling link? Did I get their bio? Did I get their photo? Right? So the different things that you'll want when you're working with a guest, you can choose to track them any way you like. I would recommend something like a Google Sheet if you're not going to use one of the other tools that we're going to talk about a little later. And I have no skin in this game, but if you're hosting on Captivate, they just released a really sexy guest booking system as part of their hosting. Yes, it's so cool. So you can like gather all the information you want from your guest right inside Captivate. It's
I like
really
that.
kind of beautiful. And they're working on an extension to that so that you'll be able to use a Zap so that the Captivate calendar coordinates with your Google Calendar.
Oh, you mean Zapier?
Yeah, what did I say?
Zapier. Yeah, well, I mean, Zapier uses Zaps to integrate.
Yes, I said they're working on Zaps. Yes, that's what I meant. Zapier, so that you can have a Zap that goes between your Captivate calendar and your Google Calendar. So if you host on Captivate, you might not know that, but they did just introduce a guest booking system. There are others that we'll talk about. Okay, so I'm going to keep us pushing. Let's talk next about how you organize your graphics. Now, here's the first thing I'm going to say. Pick where you're going to use graphics so you'll know what sizes that you need, because you don't have to be everywhere. Was that revolutionary for anybody? You don't have to be everywhere. Just because the platform exists doesn't mean you have to play there. Ask yourself if your audience is playing there or if you love being there. And if the answer to both of those is no, you can probably safely ignore that platform. But different platforms have different image size needs. So don't post vertical images as if they're going on Pinterest on Instagram, for instance, right? So different platforms need different image sizes. But develop a set of templates once you've decided those images that you'll need, and just use them over and over. It will make it so much simpler for you to create graphics to go with your show. If you have a format, right, a template that you're working within, instead of creating it from scratch every time, online tool like Canva is easy. Somebody was telling me Stencil, they use Stencil to do that. Stencil used to be called something else, and they just got bought by someone else. But there's Stencil, there's Canva, PicMonkey. There's a lot of online tools that will enable you to create graphics. Oh, Relay That will actually make the different sizes for you. So just pick a tool that you like, that you'll stick with, create a set of templates, and then whenever you create a new episode, that's one thing you don't have to worry about. You just think, oh, okay, I need to go copy this template and create the graphics that go with this particular episode. Pick a place to store them. If you love Google Drive, do it there. If you love Dropbox, do it there. If you want to save them on your hard drive, do it there. But just a system, pick a location where you want to save them, and then just keep them together. Name them similarly, create folders, just keep it simple. Because as you continue to podcast and you continue to promote, you're going to get a fair number of images and just want to know where they are if you need them. Now, if you use Canva, you don't have to store them anywhere else. They can just stay in Canva, right? But if you want to have a set of those images that are on your system, then Google Drive or Dropbox will work perfectly for that.
Yeah, exactly.
We're not going to talk. Oops, go ahead.
I'm going to mute the mic for a second because I'm going to cough.
Okay. We're not going to talk too much about social media promotion today as part of your workflow. We did have a session with Elsie Escobar from Yes, and it's in the resources area under Facebook replays. So you can check that out if you have other specific questions about using social to promote your show. And then let us know if you have other questions about that, because we've been toying with the idea of doing a session that was just specifically workflow specific to a social platform. But we need to know which platform y'all are most interested in. Do you want to know what to do with it on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, what? If you say talk, I won't be, what is it called? TikTok? I won't be able to help you. Haven't been there at all yet, but somebody else will. We'll find
We'll find somebody.
to help you with that. It just won't be me.
Personally, I find one of the tools I really like for promotion is Headliner, because Headliner, you can put it uses your RSS feed to pull audio from your podcast host. So if you want to Headliner, you use Headliner to make audiograms. And when you use that, what it does is you put in you type in the podcast that you want to use, you select the episode, you listen to it, and you find the clip that you want, and it uses your podcast art as the background. And if you really want to get crazy with it, you can change around the art and stuff, but you can also have, I want to say the word that's coming to mind is transcripts, but that's not it. Captioning. So it has captioning in a little WAV file, and Headliner has templates already set up for whichever social media you want to use. And I mean, if you're using Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, I think they have one consistent template, but they have different ones, like a larger one for YouTube and so on and so forth.
It's a good idea.
So, yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about promotion. And I'm watching the clock because we had a little bit of a late start with our YouTube technical issues. So I want to make sure that at the top of the hour, we have gotten to the bulk of what we promised, so that we delivered on what we said. And then we'll absolutely stay a little bit longer in order to make sure that we've answered the questions. But Lindsay, I don't know if you remembered this, but we were actually going to talk about promotion. So that's a great segue. So decide how you want to.
Thank you.
It's almost like I set it up, which we didn't.
Yep.
But decide which promotion methods you want to use, and then again, build that into your workflow, right? So do you want to promote your podcast using email? Great. Then you just need to have a process in place, right, as part of your workflow, how you're going to get people's email addresses, and then how you're going to communicate with them, right? Which email service do you want to use? So do you want to use email? Do you want to use social media? Do you want to use paid ads? Do you want to use smoke signals? Whatever it is that you decide to use, build that into your process so that you don't forget to do it. So for instance, when we have a new live event that we're going to do, I immediately know, okay, so I'm going to tell people about that in 3 different ways. And I have a checklist to promote our live events. So just do something similar with your podcasts. Now, the thing I will say about podcasts is tell people more than one time, because your life on social media is really short with a podcast, with any kind of update, right?
Yeah.
So if you're using Twitter as one of your promotion methods, tweet more than one time about the episode, right? At different times of day, on different days of the week, because
can I add something to that? But don't use the same exact text.
Yes.
I saw, and I mean, I know that seems to go without saying, but somebody I know just completely, she didn't just shoot her own Kickstarter in the foot. She turned her own foot into hamburger, because she tweeted 4 times a day, every day for a month, please donate to my Kickstarter. Like whatever it was, whatever the text was, it was always exactly the same thing. And it got to the point that it became easy to ignore. So
it looks spammy. And the other challenge with that is
it looks like you have no imagination.
You don't know you don't know what necessarily will capture your audience's attention immediately, right? So from whatever it is that you're tweeting, but I'm talking specifically about podcast episodes, there will be 4 or 5 things you could say about the podcast episode, right? So if you only tweet one of those, then you only gave the people who were attracted to that an opportunity to discover, versus if you would use the others. Now, if you guys want some specifics around how you promote an episode using social, again, just let us know and we'll put that together. But again, for promotion, templates make it easier. And you can use graphic templates, as we discussed with Canva, but you can also use text templates, right? And just fill in the blanks when there's a new episode. And I know that sounds like not at all sexy, but I don't mean hey, I have a brand new episode, and then there's a blank for you to fill in the name. Click it, check it out here with the link. That's not what I mean. When I say text template, I'm saying uh, thought starters for you, right? Things that will tickle your imagination so that you can create a tweet or an
Okay.
Instagram update that compels people.
Sure.
Because tweeting, I have a new episode, click here, is not compelling to anybody.
Yeah. But
right?
if you think to yourself, what's funny about this episode? What's sad about this episode? What's
shocking
about this episode, or what's whatever about this episode?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Or, this week on the episode, like if you always tell why did the whatever cross the road joke on each episode, then you can talk about, hey, guess what? We're going to find out what finally happened to that chicken.
Mm-hmm.
Lindsay, that only made sense in your head.
I figured out where you were going with that.
Yeah.
But okay. I think what we're saying
that's why we work well together.
Promotion is often like the forgotten toy when you start thinking about producing your podcast, because we're so focused on putting out amazing content and treating our guests with respect, right? We focus on that part, but guess what? People need to find it.
Yep.
So promotion shouldn't be like our last thought, but in order to make it easier to do or simpler to do, we just need to make it part of the process and make it as simple as possible. So pick a couple of places to be seen that you enjoy, that you think you'll do well. Use social automation wisely, because like Lindsay was saying, because I cannot believe that person was like going out there live and tweeting that exact same thing. What amazes me about that is Twitter doesn't let you tweet the exact same thing. So she must have been changing like one letter or like
this
one
was
word.
So long ago.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Twitter stopped that for just that reason. You can't now tweet the exact same tweet 4 times a day for a month. Yeah. Twitter won't allow that.
Yeah.
But yes, just be smart about it. Social media is about social. So you kind of have to participate or think about it.
Well, I think what people forget about is that people say, okay, I'm going to tell everybody in the world about, I'm going to tweet about my podcast to all of Twitter, or I'm going to advertise on Facebook to all of Facebook. But if your podcast is about needlepoint, you need to go to needlepoint Twitter, or you need to find where the needlepoint people are.
I think that's a really good point. Yeah. But I also think in the planning stage, because I talk to a lot of podcasters, right? And we're talking to podcasters now, looking for guests who have problems to solve on the next episode of Podcraft. So if I haven't reached out yet to you about that, you're going to see that any minute. But if you say your audience is everybody, you haven't finished planning.
Yeah.
Right?
That's true.
So you can't have an audience that's everybody. There's no such thing. So if you're still at the stage where you think your audience is everyone, you just need to do a little bit more work, because everybody's going to have different problems, remember? Because we're thinking about who we're talking to and why. What problem do they have, and how are we going to help them solve it? And you can't do that for everyone, right? So let's talk really quickly about how you stay motivated as a podcaster, and then I'm going to switch to talk tools and answer questions. So one of the ways that we stay motivated as a podcaster is we think back to why we started. We were excited. We were passionate. There was something in our world that we wanted to talk about. Keep that in mind.
Our ideas could not fail.
Yes. As you're starting to work on your podcast, remember why you started, right? Sometimes we can get a little bit away from that. And keep your listeners in mind. I actually have in my mind, when I'm recording my podcast, when I'm thinking of what my next episodes will look like, I actually think to myself and I visualize who I think my ideal podcaster is. Like I gave her a name, right? I think I know what her hobbies are, right? I hear from my listeners, but I just have this visual image, and I have like a little mirror there when I'm recording, because allegedly smiles can be heard. I don't know. I laugh all the time anyway, but I keep my listener in mind, because it's easy for me to stay motivated when I think this person's waiting to hear from me. Oh, she's going to love it when I say X, right? She's going to dig this, whatever. But if you remember why you started and you keep your listener in mind, it's fun. And every time I interact with my podcaster listeners, I'm choosing to have fun, and I'm choosing to serve people.
Yeah.
And I celebrate mistakes, right? We all love like the fail shows, like, isn't it America's Funniest Home Videos where people like smash themselves, or there's like a show on the weekends here.
In general. Yeah,
like
I know what
on the weekends, it's like the fails shows, like failed robbers and stuff like that. We love those. Traffic disasters, everything.
Yeah.
But you're going to make mistakes as a podcaster, and it needs to be funny. We're just making mistakes as humans. And I laugh harder at them probably than anybody else, which also keeps it fun for me. And I also realized that my first episodes, oh my gosh, sometimes I go back and listen to like episodes 1 through 5, and I'm like, Lord in the morning. No.
Oh gosh. You know what? The first podcast episode I ever made, my husband and I decided that we were going to make one podcast episode. We put it up on SoundCloud. We showed it to all of our friends. And the whole point of the whole thing was to say, is this a thing we can do?
Okay.
It was just proof of concept. It was like a TV pilot. It's still out there. And we just don't talk about it very much because I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's good. In fact, some of it stinks. But you
have to get through that to get to where you are now.
You have to get through your first, 5 episodes or whatever. Here's actually what I was just thinking about workflow. Somebody mentioned Trello.
Oh yes, I was going to talk about that
earlier this morning. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead with what you were going to say. I didn't want to interrupt. Go ahead.
I would just say overall, no, I'm going to flip it right back to you.
Yeah.
Overall, you stay motivated as a podcaster, and you find a workflow that works for you by keeping things simple. Still, I say to myself every day, what would this look like if it was easy? Right? Because if it gets hard, that means something in my process is broken, and it needs to be simple. Because hard and complicated keeps me from getting my message out there, which is the point of this whole thing. So what we're going to talk about then was tools.
But right before you say that, you just reminded me of something. So you talked, when it gets hard, remember how you said at the beginning, write down your episode ideas, write down why you're doing this. Because I just said to my husband the other night, I need you to write show notes. And he said, I don't know how to do that. And I said, you don't know how to write show notes?
You stole my planner and you don't know how to write show notes?
I know, exactly. And I said to him, he's like, I don't know how to do that. And I said, go to your planner, look at the beginning, why you wanted to make this show. Like what you wrote down right at the beginning when you had your original ideas. And that's going to help you write your show description. That's going to help you write your show notes because you still have that feeling from the beginning. It's like, I have fire. You got to keep that inspiration.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, but you wanted to talk about tools.
Yes. And what I'm going to do is, so we're right up at a little bit after 3. So I'm going to answer these questions really quick, and then we're going to talk about tools because there's a lot of them. And remember, we said right up front, the best tool is the tool that you will use that works the way you want to work.
That is true.
So first question, this isn't directly related to workflow, but hi, Laurent, in case he's not here. I think he's in another time zone. How do I stop sounding so breathy? So, this is going to sound really silly, but it's not. So wherever your microphone is, so I actually have a microphone sitting right here on the desk in front of me. And before you ask, it's a Samson. Q did that other way. But it's Colin's favorite recommendation for like entry level podcasts. Okay, so that's my mic. But when I'm recording, I actually have it in a boom arm coming down from above because I want to keep my head up so that my voice doesn't get all constricted, right? See how different that sounds when I'm doing this, right? But when I'm talking, because I have allergies like year round here in my state, and I'm sensitive to like how I might sound, and sometimes of the year I have asthma, right? Everybody has stuff. But in between speaking, I have a guest or I've just paused to take a breath. I turn my head from the microphone when I'm doing the breath, and then I turn it right back when I want to talk. So I know that sounds silly, but it works. Brilliant. So I'm sitting here talking and I think, oh, okay, I want to take a huge breath. And then I come back here when I'm done taking the breath. People can't see you doing it. Now, if you have a video podcast, we're going to have to come up with a different solution for you. But if you're doing an audio podcast, you can absolutely turn your head away from the camera and breathe. Here's the other thing. If you get really excited while you're talking and you like actually run out of breath, you can stop, catch your breath, clap 3 times. So you'll see that spike in your waveform when you're editing, and then start again. That way, if you want to take out the breath, you have like empty space to take it out versus you trying to go through when you're editing and take out every little breath. Second, people know that you're people and that you breathe. So I doubt that if we listen to your episode, we would think to ourselves, wow, this guy is really breathing a lot. I know that it sounds odd to your ear. I do the exact same thing. So when you're recording, if you feel like you need to take a breath, just breathe to the side of the microphone and then turn back when you're ready to record again. Let me know if you have other questions about that. Okay, Allison, what's my workflow? Oh, you're just going to put me on the spot, right? So my workflow right now is different for the podcast that I'm working on here. But let me talk about that one. So here we're using Trello to manage the podcast. We have a lot of different team members in a lot of different places. Everybody can kind of touch it. And the cards are set up with the different steps that an episode will go through. So in our Trello board for our guests, all of our episodes are guest episodes. So we have a list, right? A column in Trello that's for ideas that we haven't started yet. And then we have one where we're working with guests. And then we have, okay, so this guest is scheduled. And then we have recorded. And then we have edited. And then we have published. So all the different stages that the episode will go through, we're working with Trello to make that happen.
And then you move. Easy. Do you move that episode card from one column to the next?
Exactly. So that at a glance, anybody else on the team can see the status of that episode, because they're called cards in Trello. And in Trello, you can just move. Okay, so here's my Lindsay Harris Friel episode. Okay, where is that? Okay, it's been recorded and it's waiting for graphics, right? So Trello is a great way to do that. And there are some free Trello podcast workflow templates.
Ooh.
You can just Google that. There are a lot of them out there. I can't remember. There's 2 people I know of who have put some out, but you can just Google them and find them and they'll upload right into Trello for you. You don't need any special kind of Trello account to use those. We also have a Trello course that Colin created it's in learn.altitude.com that is all about how you use Trello to manage a podcast. So yes, Trello is a legit, super legit tool if you want to set up your workflow in there. You can even create checklists inside Trello so that when I get to this stage, oh, okay, so this new podcast episode already has checklists in it. So as I'm moving it through the steps, I can check those things off. So Trello is a great system to use for your overall planning. We talked a little bit. So Allison? Yes. That's what I use to work on podcast episodes here at the Podcast Host. In my real life, I use something a little bit different because I hadn't used Trello in a really long time. But again, remember, the best system is the one that works for you. So my personal workflow is a little bit different because I don't have everybody else working on it with me, right? I'm a solo podcaster in my real life and I have guests. So I have templates and all that stuff set up in something called ClickUp, which I actually discovered through the Podcast Host website. Was it Steph? No. Was it you? It was either you or Steph who wrote the article. I think it was Steph who wrote a review of using ClickUp to organize your podcast.
That might have been Tay, actually.
Oh, was it?
Maybe. I don't know.
Whoever it was, it's on the Podcast Host website. And I followed that post exactly like 2 months ago and moved my podcast from all the disparate tools I was using to that. So honest goodness, that's my flow. I use ClickUp in my real life. I use Trello here. If there are other aspects of workflow that you want to know specifically what I use, happy to tell you. But let's see real quick. I use Canva for graphics because it's silly simple. Solo episodes, I create my episodes and I load them into Altitude because my intro and outro are there. Boom, done. Makes me look good. For promotion, I kind of don't do too much on Instagram yet. I'm basically a Facebook and Twitter chick. And I use a software called Meet Edgar because it recycles my posts over and over on a schedule and I don't have to think about it.
I like Meet Edgar.
Promotion,
I like the idea of
editing,
Meet Edgar. I just haven't figured it out yet.
Once you figure it out, it's like the best boyfriend ever. So I can't remember if there was another piece of workflow that you specifically asked me what I use. So I apologize. Ask that again if I missed it. Scott has a specific Altitude question. All right. Is there a simple setting or simple method to get Altitude to cut longer pauses? No. there's a simple method, which we call the click method, where when you're recording it, if there's going to be a long pause, you clap 3 times so that the waveform will jump there so you can visually see areas where you need to make cuts. But Alitu won't automatically make those cuts for you because we don't know which pauses you don't need. Does that make sense? So if you want to make cuts, you can do visual tricks so that it's easier for you to jump in and make those cuts. And it's really simple once you get in that habit of just looking for spikes in sound to cut it. The other thing I would say is don't be afraid to pause when you're recording. It's like we think there can't be any breaths or any pause in our episodes, and that's not how people talk. Naturally, there are ebbs and flows to conversation. We stop, we breathe, right? We pause, we think. So don't feel like you have to remove all those to make it sound natural, because it actually sounds unnatural when you have all your sounds like butting right up next to one another.
Yeah.
So test it. I also did this one time. I recorded an episode and I published it without editing it at all to see what my audience thought. And my feelings were a little bit hurt because they didn't seem to appreciate all the editing that I had done. But there's a quick answer to cut longer pauses, make them visually stand out. I'm loving that you said you wish the music clips were more extensive. I lie not. We were talking about this 2 hours ago. Tell me what types of music clips you would like. Is there another genre? Do you want music clips that do different things? If you're still here, which I hope you are, please tell me what kinds of music clips you would want. We were just talking about this. So this is your opportunity to weigh in on that while we're still talking about it. Last one. I can't remember who asked the questions, but someone wanted to know on this session, how do you make squillions with your podcast?
How do you make squillions?
How you make squillions. And I'm assuming squillions mean lots and lots of money.
Oh.
So I can't tell you how to make squillions of dollars with your podcast. But what I'm going to ask you instead is dollars the measurement that you're choosing for podcast success? Because there are a lot of things that you can measure. If you're using your podcast to drive people to a business, you can measure conversions there. If you're using it to build your email list, if you're using it for fun as a podcast, if you're trying to get sponsors, there are a lot of different ways that you can measure success. So I would love to know, what are some of those measures that you're using for success? Because there are a lot of ways to make money with a podcast. Sponsorship. Come next Wednesday when Danielle's talking about how she makes money using her show notes for affiliate dollars, right? There are a lot of different ways that you can make money with a podcast. I just would want to understand better what type of podcast you have, who are you talking to, what problem are you solving, and what types of things do you want to measure?
I have to say, along with that, in my case with podcasting, my whole thing was I want to get a job that I'll love. And I did. Here I am.
Oh, that was your measure of success.
That was my measure of success. Okay. Because what it was I was in a position where I was underemployed, very much like, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. And the good thing about having a podcast is it's proof that you can start a project, manage the project, and complete a project. And it's proof that you can bring your ideas to life. And it's a very, very good way to get a job that you'll love. I mean, in my case, my job happened to be, helping people make podcasts. But there's a lot of ways to measure success. And I actually, speaking of making squidjillions, I have an idea that I have not tested yet.
It might have been squillions. I might have gotten it wrong.
Okay. So I have an idea that I haven't tried yet. I'm thinking about it. I'm going to set up a subscription-only podcast on Apple Podcasts, and it's going to be called Affirmations for Billionaires. And the only way that you can hear the podcast is you have to subscribe at $1,000 per episode. And it's going to be a podcast to make really, really rich people feel good about themselves.
Okay.
Because then you only have to have like that one person who's like, sure, I'll do it.
Okay. When are you going to do that?
I'll let you know, because I'm going to need you to help me.
Okay. Wow. See, I should have said that. Okay. Oh, I think someone's typing. Okay, so I see one other question over here before we talk tools in circles. So Tony asked, do you have to do, I think what you're saying is, do you have to do market research to start with your audience? I think that's what you're asking, right? And you don't have to go out and do market research, but you should have an idea, right? There's a reason that you want to talk to the audience that you want to talk to. Either you're part of that or you have a lot of passion for that audience, right? So there's a reason. So you need to know a little bit about them, right? And then just dig a little bit. So for instance, I used to do a podcast, the second podcast I was ever the producer for. My, at the time, 75-year-old mother and her 73-year-old sister did a podcast where they talked about the long-running soap opera, The Young and the Restless. Now,
wait a minute, your mother and your sister did
my mother and her sister. Mm-hmm. And they had fake names because they were convinced they were going to become so popular that people would maul them in the streets. So they talked about this particular soap opera. Now, when they started doing this, they said they wanted to do an episode because they felt like most of the soap opera magazines and stuff were too nice, and that there were things that the people behind the soap operas needed to know that the viewers felt. So they didn't go off and do market research, but they did have several conversations with themselves before they approached me to tell me why they wanted to do this. And they had a very clear idea of who they wanted to talk to. For your podcast, you will have something similar. But I did say to them, well, for the other people who watch the soap opera who you want to talk to, where do they hang out? Right? Where are you getting these ideas from about the things that they want to say or the things that they need to know? So there was a little bit of research, but it was more talking to people when they went to their sorority meeting or like mentioning at church, right? So they felt like their listeners were people like them. So they just had some conversations with people who they knew to see how it would be perceived. So you don't have to go, you can go and do a survey if you like, but you don't have to dig in and do too much market research, but you need to have a clear understanding of who your audience is and how will you get that? That's the question. So the amount of research you need to do is just based on how you're going to get answers to who your audience is and what their problems are, right? Because you probably know a fair amount of that. If you gave yourself some quiet time and sat down with a blank piece of paper and just started to think about who these people are and what problems you want to solve for them, you're going to have a pretty good idea about what their issues are. And then you can think about, okay, so where will they hang out? What types of things will they talk about? What questions will they ask themselves? Okay, so I hope that helped. I wasn't suggesting that you go do full on market research.
I think even if you just sort of lurk on, I want to say if you basically can join social media groups, like if you follow certain hashtags on Twitter or if you can join groups on Facebook and then just sit there and never comment, but just read. Yeah, just lurk and just hear how people express their concerns and what concerns they're expressing. Like if
it's a specific Facebook group though around the topic though.
Right. Like, okay, like if I'm doing my fly
not
fishing
just any
podcast,
random. Yes, gotcha.
Right. If I'm going to join, if I'm doing my fly fishing podcast, I might join a group that's all about different kinds of bait and lures. And I might sit there and listen to some people saying, well, you know, you really got to use this particular kind of bait. Oh, yeah, but I went to a store in Montana once. I had this kind of bait and it was the best ever. And then, you know, oh, okay, when I do my episode about bait, these are some things that will be worth exploring, that I need to research whatever that bait and tackle shop was in Montana or whatever.
So that's a good idea. See, I don't think Facebooky, so I didn't think about that. But I have a friend who recently relocated to Costa Rica. And before she did, she joined a couple of Costa Rica expat groups on Facebook to find out what some of the issues might be. So again, not full on market research, but a way of understanding what her experience there was going to be like. And now she's thinking about starting a podcast to help other people who are planning on doing the same thing. Yeah. So I see we're at 20 after, and I'm going to include an updated sheet with tools for specific tasks in the references that I'll attach right to this live session. But in there, I've talked about a couple tools for social media, a couple tools for scheduling, which we've already talked about. There's a couple of systems in there as well. Promotion, we've already talked about Headliner. Another one I'll suggest is Missing Letter. I love that thing because you can give it the URL of your, let's say you create a blog post that goes along with your podcast episode. It will create a campaign for you and you can tell it, I want it to be 3 months long, 6 months, a year, whatever. And it will look it'll go read that URL and it'll come up with some suggestions for what you might share on Twitter or Facebook. So remember that thing where we were saying don't tweet the exact same thing? It will come up with like 9 different suggestions for you of what you might tweet instead. And then they all include a link, right, to your podcast episode so people can find it. So missing letter, and letter is spelled Lettr, but there will be a link in the PDF that I attach. For transcription, we talked about Fusebox plugin to actually display the transcriptions on your site. Otter AI is a great service to actually create the transcripts. I love them. I guess I've trained them so well now I don't have to do as much editing. Once I have put my MP3 file in there, it spits out a transcript, and I'm like, oh, that was almost perfect. Might do a couple of tweaks. For recording and editing, you guys know I'm going to suggest Alitu, but there are other options as well. Zoom is a great software to use for doing remote recording. Audacity is a great software to use for editing. Let's see what else. I think those are all. Oh, for systems, there is a new software I've only played with a little bit. It's called Podcast SOP. And yes, I'll include a link, but they have like workflow and templates in there for how you could manage your podcast. If you're brand new and you're thinking, I don't even know where to start with writing out all my different steps, and you've already checked the templates that we have here in the resource area, then you could look at something like Podcast SOP. It is not a free service. There's a free trial. I can't remember if it's a week or 2 weeks, but there is a free trial in there. But it's an interesting way of managing your podcast flow all in one place. So you can't keep all your assets and everything there, but you can absolutely keep all your workflows there. And it's got a calendaring system and everything to keep up with your episodes. There's a lot of help out there for helping you manage your workflow once you decide what your workflow is. Did I miss anything, Linz?
I don't think so. I'm looking here to see if there's any more questions. And if there are any, I can't see them.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming. I know we started a little late.
Sorry about starting late.
But next time we'll just be amazing at this whole like tech thing with Circle. But we're new here. We haven't even been here in 2 weeks. But yes, tell all your friends. But
tell all your friends about Lindsay and Allegra.
No, I meant tell all your friends about Podcraft, not tell all your friends
about Podcraft.
But thank you so much for coming. I hope that gave you some great ideas, some peace, and some confidence as you're working on your podcast workflow. If you have other questions, just drop them in below, and we will, as always, be hanging out in Circle to make sure you get answers for those. And next week's session is all about show notes. Same time, same Circle station.
Yay.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.